In part 1, Clara Moreno risked everything to save her neighbor and discovered the black card, unlocking the Empire of Shadows. There, she met Nathaniel Cross, a surgeon with secrets, and faced Samuel, a ghost from his past. Now move towards part 2, where the weight of silence grows heavier and hidden truths begin to surface. If you are new to the channel, then please subscribe to the channel and like the video, and tell us in the comments where are you watching from. Now, let's jump into the story. The air in the corridor grew heavier with every second. Clara stood frozen between Nathaniel Cross and the man who had stepped out of the shadows. Samuel's scarred face carried the weight of years gone wrong, and his voice still echoed with power. For Clara, it was like watching two storms collide, each one filled with secrets too dangerous to name. Nathaniel did not move at first. His jaw tightened, his shoulders squared, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of something deeper: recognition, regret, and a hint of fear. Samuel took a slow step forward, his boots heavy on the marble floor. "You haven't changed," Samuel said, his tone calm but sharp as glass. "Still hiding behind walls, still pretending silence can bury the truth." Clara looked at Nathaniel. She had seen him control a room with nothing more than a glance. But here, in front of this man, his control seemed thinner, his mask weaker. Celeste entered quietly, her eyes moving between her father and the intruder. Her expression was sharp, her presence unshaken. "So it's true," she said. "The past always finds its way back." Mrs. Grant's soft voice broke the tension from inside the room. She was weak, her words almost a whisper, yet they carried weight. "Samuel, leave this place. Your fight is not here." But Samuel did not listen. Instead, he laughed, low and bitter. "The fight was never over, Marianne. You know that. He built his empire on what we started together, and then he cut me out. Left me to bleed while he rose to power." Clara's heart raced. Betrayal. That word clung to the air like smoke. This was more than rivalry. This was history, tangled in scars and choices that still burned. Nathaniel's voice was calm when he finally spoke. "You came here to finish what you started, but you don't belong in this world anymore. Leave before you destroy what little you still have." Samuel's eyes narrowed. "You think you can shut me out again? No, Nathaniel. This time, everyone will know what you've done. Your empire of shadows cannot protect you forever." The weight of his words pressed on Clara's chest. She realized she was standing at the center of a story built long before she arrived. She wanted to step back, to disappear into the safety of her old life. But it was too late. She had already crossed into a world where every secret cut deeper than the last. Celeste stepped closer, her voice sharp as a blade. "Father, you never told me the truth, and now he stands here, proof of everything you kept from us." Nathaniel's eyes flicked to her, pain flashing before the mask returned. "I did what I had to do, for you, for all of us." Clara could not hold her silence any longer. "This isn't just about the past," she said, her voice trembling but steady. "If you let it, betrayal will eat everything, your family, your future, even the people who have stood by you." For a moment, the corridor fell quiet. The sound of machines from Mrs. Grant's room filled the silence. Clara's words seemed small compared to the weight of history, yet they lingered, echoing in the marble walls. Samuel smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "The girl speaks of loyalty, but she does not know the cost. Loyalty built this empire, and betrayal nearly destroyed it. Now the truth will decide which one wins." Nathaniel finally took a step forward, his voice low but firm. "You came here for revenge, Samuel, but understand this: revenge will not heal what was broken. It will only bury you deeper." Clara watched the two men, realizing they were not just enemies. Once they had been brothers in trust, perhaps even friends. But betrayal had carved a canyon between them. and now she was standing at the edge of it. Celeste's eyes hardened. Then let it end tonight. No more secrets. No more shadows. Mrs. Grant's frail hand gripped Clara's from across the room, her whisper urgent. Be careful, child. Once you see the truth, you cannot unsee it. Clara's heart pounded as she met Nathaniel's gaze. The walls he had built around himself were cracking, the silence breaking, and in that moment, she understood why this world of shadows was so dangerous. Betrayal was not just part of the past. It was alive, shaping the choices of the present and waiting to decide the future. The night stretched longer, every second heavy with tension. Clara knew the story was only beginning, but she also knew one thing for certain. In the empire of shadows, betrayal was never the end. It was always the beginning of something far more dangerous. The corridor still carried the echo of Samuel's words long after he stepped into the shadows again. Clara felt the silence pressing down on her, heavy and unrelenting. She wanted answers, but every face around her seemed carved from stone. Inside the private suite, Mrs. Grant rested with her eyes closed, her breath shallow yet steady. Clara sat beside her, holding her frail hand. The machines hummed quietly, each sound reminding Clara that she was now tied to a world she had never asked to enter. Nathaniel Cross stood near the window, his figure outlined against the glow of the city lights. His silence spoke louder than words, as if he carried the weight of 1,000 unspoken truths. Clara studied him, her thoughts restless. He was more than a surgeon. He was a man built of secrets, and those secrets were shaping every step she now took. Mrs. Grant stirred slightly, her eyes fluttering open. Her voice was weak, but clear enough to pull Clara closer. You're brave, child, but you must be careful. This place doesn't forgive mistakes. Clara leaned in, her heart racing. Why do you have that black card? What does it mean? Mrs. Grant's lips trembled as she tried to speak. The card, it is not just for rescue. It is a bond. A promise from long ago. I was part of it once, before the empire became what it is now. Her words faded into a whisper. Secrets carry their own cost. Clara wanted to press for more, but Nathaniel's footsteps crossed the room, cutting the moment short. His gaze landed on her, sharp and searching. She should be resting, he said, his tone steady but edged with warning. Clara stood, unwilling to back down. She trusted me with the card. She wanted me to call. Don't keep me in the dark, not when I'm already part of this. For the first time, his eyes softened, though only for a heartbeat. The less you know, the safer you are. This world consumes people. It swallows kindness and turns it into weakness. His words struck her, but instead of retreating, she lifted her chin. Maybe that's why you hide behind silence. But silence doesn't save anyone. It only makes the shadows stronger. A flicker of something crossed his face, pain, regret, maybe even a touch of respect. But before he could reply, Celeste entered, her presence sharp as always. She looked at Clara with cold eyes. You don't belong here. My father's silence protects us. It's better you remember that before it's too late. Clara's chest tightened, but she refused to lower her gaze. Mrs. Grant needed me, and I won't turn away from her. Not now, not ever. The tension between the two women was heavy, each word carrying unspoken challenges. But then Samuel's voice returned, distant yet clear, drifting through the hall like a shadow. He hasn't told you the truth, has he? Samuel's words echoed from the doorway, his figure half hidden. He hasn't told you what he gave up, what he betrayed, to build this empire. Nathaniel's shoulders stiffened, his silence more telling than any denial. Clara's eyes moved between them, questions rising like waves. Samuel stepped closer, his tone almost gentle, though filled with poison. Once we built something together. Once we trusted each other. Then he chose power over loyalty, and that choice cost lives. Clara felt her heart pound in her chest. She turned to Nathaniel. Is it true? Did you betray him? Nathaniel's jaw tightened, his silence stretching long enough to feel like an answer. Finally, his voice came low, steady, but filled with weight. I made choices I cannot erase. But betrayal is not as simple as he tells it. Samuel smiled bitterly. And there lies the heart of it. Silence. Always silence. You hide behind it because truth would destroy the image you've built. Clara could feel the weight of silence wrapping around everyone in the room. It was not just absence of sound. It was a prison, holding secrets, regrets, and unspoken pain. She realized then that silence was the true weapon of this empire, sharper than any blade. Later, when Samuel disappeared once more into the shadows, Clara found herself alone with Nathaniel. The city lights glowed behind him, his expression unreadable. You shouldn't trust me, he said quietly. My past will only bring you harm. But Clara's voice was steady when she answered. Trust isn't about perfection. It's about choosing to stand beside someone, even when the silence is heavy. I'm not afraid of the truth, Nathaniel. I'm afraid of being blind to it. For the first time, his gaze lingered on her, softer now, almost vulnerable. The silence between them shifted, not as a wall, but as something fragile, something that could break. And Clara knew then that the weight of silence was not just his burden. It was hers too, for stepping into a world built on shadows meant carrying secrets that could never be put down. The night stretched on, but within it, the battle lines were already drawn. Silence held power, but it could not hold forever. And when it broke, everything would change. The dawn arrived with pale light spilling across the marble floors of the private suite. But the shadows inside the empire remained unbroken. Clara had not slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Mrs. Grant's bruised face, Samuel's bitter smile, and Nathaniel's silence that weighed heavier than steel. Celeste stood near the window, her arms folded tightly across her chest. Her voice cut through the quiet. This empire cannot survive with secrets rotting it from within. Father, if you cannot protect what you've built, then I will. Nathaniel turned slowly, his gaze calm but sharp. You speak with ambition, Celeste, but ambition without understanding destroys faster than betrayal ever could. Clara watched them, feeling the air thicken between father and daughter. Celeste's jaw tightened, her words biting. You call it ambition. I call it survival. While you cling to your past, men like Samuel circle us like vultures. Someone has to act. The exchange revealed a truth Clara had been sensing from the beginning. Loyalty inside this empire was not steady. It was fractured, splintered between love, power, and survival. Mrs. Grant stirred weakly, her hand finding Clara's. Her voice trembled. Be careful, child. When families fight, the empire shakes. And when the empire shakes, innocents are the first to fall. Clara's heart ached at the warning. She looked from the fragile woman on the bed to the powerful figures around her. This battle was not hers, yet she was already part of it. The sound of footsteps broke the moment. Samuel entered once more, his presence like a shadow sliding across the room. His eyes gleamed with cold amusement. I see nothing has changed. Still divided, still drowning in silence. Celeste's eyes narrowed. You have no place here. Samuel smiled. On the contrary, I have every place here. Without me, there would be no empire. Your father knows that. He just won't admit it. Nathaniel's voice cut in, low and controlled. You come here to gloat, but all you bring are old wounds. This isn't your fight anymore. Samuel's laugh was bitter. It has always been my fight, and now the world will know the truth. I will show them what the great Nathaniel Cross sacrificed to build his throne of shadows. Clara stepped forward, her voice trembling but firm. Enough. All of you are tearing each other apart while Mrs. Grant is fighting to survive. Is this what loyalty means in your world? Anger, secrets, and power games. The room fell silent. Clara's words hung in the air like a blade, cutting through the tension. Nathaniel's eyes shifted to her, his expression unreadable. Celeste, however, turned sharply, her tone icy. You don't understand this world. You think loyalty is simple. But here, loyalty demands blood, sacrifice, and choices you cannot undo. Clara met her stare without flinching. Maybe so. But if loyalty only means hurting the people closest to you, then it isn't loyalty at all. It's fear. Samuel's smile faded at her words, and for the first time, a flicker of uncertainty passed over his face. Mrs. Grant whispered faintly, her strength waning. The card was never about power. It was about trust. Remember that. Her words made Clara's pulse quicken. The black card was more than a symbol of wealth and control. It was a reminder of trust, the very thing this fractured family had lost. Samuel's voice hardened again. Trust is dead. Only survival remains. And soon, the world will choose between you and me, Nathaniel. He left as swiftly as he came, leaving silence behind. Clara turned back to see Celeste step closer to her father. Her voice was quiet but sharp. He's right about one thing. The world will choose. And if you can't lead us, I will. Nathaniel's shoulders bore the weight of her words. Clara could see the battle within him. The desire to protect his family and the burden of his past. His silence was no longer just walls. It was chains. Later, as the city lights flickered against the night sky, Clara found herself standing with Nathaniel in the quiet corridor. His voice was low, almost broken. Every choice I made fractured the people around me. I thought silence could protect them. I was wrong. Clara touched his arm lightly, her words soft. Then make a different choice now. Don't let the past decide your future. Don't let betrayal be the only thing you leave behind. He looked at her, his eyes carrying storms. For a moment, the mask slipped, and she saw the man beneath, the healer, the father, the one still haunted by loyalty and love. Clara knew then that fractured loyalties could either destroy this empire or rebuild it. But the decision would not rest on Nathaniel alone. It would rest on every choice each of them made in the days to come. And as she stood there, caught between shadows and light, Clara understood the truth. The empire of shadows was breaking apart, and she was no longer just an outsider. She was part of its fate. The night outside the Cross Empire's walls was still, but inside, tension grew sharp enough to cut. Clara felt it pressing from every side. Fractured loyalties had left scars, and betrayal had awakened ghosts too dangerous to ignore. Now, everything led to this moment, where truth could no longer be hidden behind silence. Mrs. Grant lay weak on her bed, her breathing uneven. Yet her eyes held a quiet fire, as if she knew this night carried the weight of an ending. She clutched Clara's hand, her voice trembling but steady. The card was always a key, child, but not for wealth or power. It was a key to the truth, and tonight, the truth must be spoken. Nathaniel stood at the foot of the bed, his tall frame casting long shadows across the room. His silence, once a shield, now seemed fragile. Clara could see the storm within him. Celeste lingered by the doorway, her ambition fierce, her heart clouded by anger. And then Samuel appeared again, his presence like a blade sliding through the quiet. "So this is how it ends," Samuel said, his voice rough with years of bitterness. In whispers and half-truths. "Tell her, Nathaniel. Tell your daughter what you did to me, to us, to the empire we built together." Celeste's eyes narrowed, her voice sharp. "Enough riddles. I deserve the truth. We all do." Nathaniel's hands clenched at his sides. For years he had buried his past beneath walls of silence, but those walls were breaking. His voice came low, filled with weight. Samuel and I began this empire together. It was meant to protect people, to give them power where they had none. But greed poisoned it. Deals were made, lines crossed, and when I realized how far we had fallen, I tried to cut ties. I betrayed him, to save the empire from becoming nothing but crime and blood. Samuel's laugh was bitter. You betrayed me to steal it for yourself. Don't paint yourself as a savior. You wanted control, and you took it. Clara felt the air grow colder. Two men stood divided by the same truth, each holding a different version of it. The trail had not been simple. It had been survival, ambition, and fear twisted together. Mrs. Grant's voice broke the silence, soft but clear. Both of you are wrong. The empire was never about control. It was about trust, and both of you forgot that long ago. The words struck hard. Even Celeste's sharp expression faltered. Clara realized the old woman had carried this truth longer than anyone else. Samuel stepped forward, his tone dangerous. Words mean nothing now. Only one of us can claim the empire. Tonight, that choice will be made. But before he could move closer, Clara stood in his path. Her body trembled, yet her voice was firm. The empire doesn't belong to you, or to Nathaniel, or even to Celeste. It belongs to the people who trusted it. The card was never a weapon. It was a promise. And promises are not built on betrayal. They're built on loyalty and courage. Her words carried through the room, steady as stone. Nathaniel looked at her, his mask breaking at last. Pain and regret shadowed his face. But beneath it all was something new, a spark of release. She's right, Nathaniel said finally. This empire has lived too long in shadows. If it is to survive, it must end as it began, with truth. Samuel's eyes burned with fury. You would throw it all away? Nathaniel met his gaze, steady and unflinching. I would rather lose the empire than lose myself again. Celeste stepped closer, her eyes locked on her father. For a long moment, her ambition warred with the silence she had grown up under. Then, slowly, she lowered her gaze. If it must fall, then let it fall on our terms, not his. The room grew still. Samuel's fury cracked into disbelief, and for the first time, he seemed smaller, broken by the very empire he had fought to reclaim. Mrs. Grant lifted her hand weakly, pressing the black card into Clara's palm. You are the last key, she whispered, because you remember what we forgot, that kindness is not weakness, it is strength. Clara felt the weight of the card, heavier now than it had ever been. She understood. The empire would not end with violence, but with choice. And the choice was hers. She stepped forward and placed the card on the table, her voice steady. The shadows end here. If the empire is to live, it will be rebuilt on trust, not fear. Nathaniel's shoulders eased, the storm in his eyes finally quieting. Celeste gave a small nod, her sharpness softening. Even Samuel, though bitter, turned away, his fight drained. The silence that followed was different from before. It was no longer heavy with secrets, but light with release. Clara looked out at the city through the wide window. The skyline shimmered, no longer distant, but alive with possibility. Her life had changed forever, but she was no longer afraid. The empire of shadows had ended, but something new had begun. And in that moment, Clara understood the truth. Sometimes the last key is not power, or wealth, or control. A last key is simply courage. The night inside the empire's hidden walls was heavy with silence, the kind that carried both danger and truth. Clara stood in the private suite, her heart pounding. Everything that had happened, the black card, the rescue, the secrets, had led to this moment. And now, the weight of the past pressed down on all of them. Mrs. Grant rested weakly on the bed, her body frail, but her eyes filled with quiet strength. She held Clara's hand with surprising firmness. The card was never just for power, she whispered. It was always a key. Not a key to money or control, but a key to truth. Tonight, that truth must be unlocked. Nathaniel Cross stood nearby, tall and unmoving, yet Clara could see the storm in his expression. His silence, once his greatest shield, now threatened to shatter. Celeste lingered close to the doorway, her sharp eyes full of questions and ambition. And then, as if summoned by the past itself, Samuel entered again. He moved slowly, his scarred face lit by the glow of the city lights outside. "So," he said, his voice rough but steady, "the great empire ends here, in hushed words and broken promises. Tell her, Nathaniel. Tell your daughter what you did." Celeste's face hardened. "I want answers. No more secrets. No more silence." Nathaniel's shoulders straightened. His voice came low, heavy with regret. "Years ago, Samuel and I built this empire together. It was meant to protect the vulnerable, to create strength where there was none. But greed poisoned everything. Lines were crossed, people were hurt. When I realized how far we had fallen, I broke the bond. I betrayed Samuel. I believed it was the only way to stop the empire from becoming nothing but corruption." Samuel's bitter laugh cut through the room. "Don't twist it into a noble act. You wanted control, Nathaniel. You cut me out, took everything, and left me in the shadows." Clara's heart pounded. Betrayal was no longer just a word. It was a wound, still bleeding between these two men. Before either could continue, Mrs. Grant spoke again. Her voice, though weak, carried across the room. "Both of you are blind. The empire was never about who held control. It was about trust. You lost that long ago, and now the empire has rotted because of it." Her words hit harder than anger ever could. Even Celeste faltered, her sharp expression softening for a moment. Clara realized that Mrs. Grant had always known more than she revealed. She had carried this truth longer than anyone else. Samuel's eyes burned. "Trust is dead. Power is all that remains. Tonight, I will claim it." He stepped forward, but Clara moved before she could think. Standing in front of him, her body trembled, but her voice was strong. "No, the empire doesn't belong to you, or to Nathaniel, or even to Celeste. It belongs to the people who believed in it. The ones who trusted the promise of that black card. If you turn it into nothing but revenge and fear, then everything will be lost." The room fell into silence. Even Samuel stopped, staring at her as if surprised by her courage. Nathaniel's gaze fixed on Clara, the storm in his eyes breaking apart. Finally, he spoke, his voice raw. "She's right. If this empire is to survive, it cannot stay in shadows. It must end as it began, with truth." Samuel shook his head, anger filling his voice. "You would throw everything away?" "No," Nathaniel answered, his tone steady. "I would free it. The empire of shadows cannot continue. It devours anyone who enters." Celeste stepped closer, her voice quieter than before. "Then let it end tonight. Not with betrayal, but with choice." Mrs. Grant pressed the black card into Clara's palm. Her hand trembled, but her words were clear. "You are the last key, not because of power, but because you still believe in kindness. That is what we lost, and that is what will save us." Clara felt the weight of the card in her hand. It was more than metal and words. It was the burden of trust, the choice to break the cycle of betrayal. She walked to the center of the room and placed it on the table. Her voice was steady, meant for everyone to hear. "The shadows end here. If an empire remains, it will be rebuilt on trust, not on silence or fear." Samuel's fury faded into disbelief. Celeste lowered her gaze, her ambition tempered by clarity. Nathaniel's shoulders eased, his silence replaced by something close to peace. The room grew quiet, but the silence was no longer heavy. It was release. The empire of shadows had ended, not through violence, but through choice. Clara looked toward the city skyline glowing beyond the window. It no longer seemed distant or cold. It seemed alive, full of possibility. Her life would never return to what it had been, but she was no longer afraid. In that moment, Clara understood the truth. The last key was never wealth, control, or revenge. The last key was courage. So the empire of shadows has ended, but courage has unlocked a new beginning. Thank you for watching this story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below.